Next on the news, growing memorials and vigils to remember the dozens of migrants who died in a sweltering tractor trailer in Texas. Plus,
so I guess we are expecting to see some of that and women coming to New York, more women coming to New York for abortions.
In this post-Roe America, we speak with Kristen Curran from the New York State Catholic Conference about the future of abortion in New York and the nation. And despite being banned by her home archdiocese because of her stance on abortion, witnesses say Nancy Pelosi was seen at the Vatican receiving communion. Plus,
it means the world to us. It means the world to us and our family.
The family of a World War II veteran who made the supreme sacrifice, getting back a cherished belonging. I'm Christine Persichetti. Current News starts right now. Tears and prayers in San Antonio, Texas. A memorial growing at the spot where dozens of migrants were found dead in a stifling trailer. The death toll has now risen to 53 as authorities say they've been struggling to identify the victims of one of the deadliest migrant incidents in U.S. history. Victims have been found with no identifying documents at all, or in one case, a stolen ID. On top of that, family members have been hard to reach due to a lack of phone service. But as John Paul Barajas reports, there are those in Texas who are honoring the fallen.
A memorial site is now located where authorities found an 18-wheeler with 62 migrants inside, 46 of them pronounced dead on scene. As the criminal investigation continues, people are coming to pay their respects. One man saying, "I was startled. How is it possible that something like this could happen? To lock them in a trailer and then abandon them? I spent the whole day thinking. I had to come visit." Local officials calling it the largest mass casualty event in San Antonio's history. The number of bodies, a daunting task for the county medical examiner.
Our medical examiner's office has carried a heavy load over the last few weeks from the Uvalde victims and now today. Because of the high number of victims from last night, we have reached out to neighboring counties for assistance.
The 18-wheeler carrying the migrants was found in the commissioner's precinct. The commissioner visited two of the survivors who are being treated at University Hospital, an adolescent boy who she says is in need of prayers, as well as a 23-year-old woman from Guatemala whose condition is improving.
And the two had just been taken out. She was intubated earlier and had just been taken out. She was able to talk. We were able to connect them quicker, so they were able to talk to her mother. Sadly, she was also traveling with her brother.
That was John Paul Barajas reporting. U.S. bishops are also mourning the loss of life, calling on lawmakers to prevent incidents like this from happening again. The Conference of Catholic Bishops releasing this statement saying, "As a church called to build a culture of life, we cannot tolerate this injustice. To prevent further loss of life, we urge governments and civil society to promote access to protection, including asylum, develop new pathways for those compelled to migrate, and combat human trafficking in all its forms." Also expressing his condolences, Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. He says the Mexican government is already supporting the families of the victims and the investigation.
We're in support. Our consul has been there since yesterday. There are also immigration officials from Mexico, and we will be attentive to support the families of the victims.
The Mexican president also went on to blame the incident on human smuggling, poverty, and the lack of control at the U.S.-Mexico border. One of the three people arrested in connection to the incident includes the man accused of driving and then abandoning the tractor trailer full of migrants. According to police, the suspect was found in a nearby field and was very high on meth. They later arrested and charged two other men after tracing the vehicle's registration to a home in San Antonio. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer will officially step down at noon on Thursday. Justice Breyer notified the president he will retire at the end of the current term after the court issues its final opinions Thursday morning. His retirement comes after almost 28 years of service on the Supreme Court. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is also due to be sworn in, making history as the first black woman ever to become a Supreme Court justice. Governor Kathy Hochul taking home a primary day victory.
Thank you so much.
After all the ballots were counted, Hochul took home 67% of the Democratic primary vote. She'll take on Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin in the race for New York governor. Hochul took over in August of 2021 after Andrew Cuomo stepped down amid sexual harassment allegations.
To the 34 million women now at risk of losing abortion access entirely, I know this decision is a direct attack on your lives and your livelihoods.
That's Governor Hochul speaking out after Friday's Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. But Governor Hochul signed a package of bills ahead of the decision to protect abortions in the state. They include protecting women who visit New York to get an abortion and protecting medical professionals who perform the procedure from lawsuits and criminal charges. Friday's Supreme Court decision did nothing to change the legality of abortion in New York. The 2019 Reproductive Health Act made abortion a fundamental right in the state, and legally, it is impossible to enact regulations or restrictions on abortion, as most other states have done. Here now with more on that is Kristen Curran, Director of Government Relations for the New York State Catholic Conference. Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
So, Kristen, it seems like abortion is here to stay in New York. Those bills the governor signed will just lead to more people coming here to get the procedure. You've described it as abortion tourism. How is the New York State Catholic Conference fighting this?
Well, we're trying to offer alternatives and kind of promote our message, which we've been working on now for months in anticipation of this ruling, which is, of course, a culture of life. And so we're really focused on women, pregnant women, families, children, and promoting the things that help them and making sure that we're not boxing women into abortion as their best and only choice.
Yeah, state lawmakers again this month tried to insert abortion rights into New York State's constitution. It didn't pass, but do you worry that could change and the right to an abortion will one day be guaranteed in the state's constitution? And what would it mean if it is?
We certainly do worry that could change. It seems to be changing on a dime. What we're hearing from up at the Capitol, it's going back and forth. It was going back and forth at the end of session. So definitely something we're still watching. It sounds like it could very well come up when they come back for a special session tomorrow to address gun violence. So it's definitely something we think could happen. If it did happen, we've talked all along about the fact that it's very unnecessary. As many people know, in New York, abortion is basically legal until the moment of birth. So it would certainly seem to us like something that's unnecessary. If it were to actually happen, certainly it would make an abortion ban next to impossible to achieve here in New York if public opinion or the legislative makeup were to change. But we don't see that happening anytime soon or ever. So again, it seems just very unnecessary from our perspective.
Right, and New York is already known as the abortion capital of the country. Let's take a look at some numbers. In 2017, there were more than 105,000 abortions in the state, which amounted to 12.2% of all abortions in the U.S. What are some alternatives for women in crisis pregnancies, and how can these women be helped?
Sure. Well, certainly, the first things, of course, that come to mind are adoption and things like that. So those are things that we always talk about as great alternatives and things that we like to support women in making that choice. And then obviously another alternative is women carrying their pregnancies to term and giving birth to their babies. But of course, women need help and resources to do that. So that goes back to what I said before about our message, this culture of life, walking with moms in need, all things that we've been working on and really have our head down and kind of our mission close to our hearts now as we look forward in this post-Roe world.
Yeah, a lot of the U.S. bishops have been pushing that. And meanwhile, in other parts of the country, we've already started seeing abortion clinics closing. What kind of further change do you think this decision on Roe will make across the country and here in New York, if anything?
So certainly there's a lot of talk about women now having to drive across state lines and seek out abortions in places where it is legal, if it is illegal where they are. So I guess we are expecting to see some of that and women coming to New York, more women coming to New York for abortions in the wake of this decision. But we would hope that it would lead, as I've talked about, to more people kind of taking up this cause of life and for people to start focusing more on helping women and, helping them carry their babies to term. So hopefully we're going to see a little bit of a renewed push for those alternatives.
All right, got to get that word out. Kristen Curran from the New York State Catholic Conference, thanks for being here with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
A top Biden administration official has released a 5-point plan to protect access to abortion. The Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, Javier Becerra, released the plan to reporters on Tuesday. The points are increasing access to medical abortion, ensuring patient privacy and non-discrimination for those seeking so-called reproductive health care, making sure that the clinical judgment of doctors and hospitals supports treatment for pregnant mothers, reaffirming that abortion care can be appropriate, getting all providers from doctors to clinics the appropriate training in family planning needs. And he says they want to protect family planning care, including emergency contraceptives. Over the last day, Instagram has been hiding several groups' posts and stories, describing them as sensitive content. In some cases, users had to confirm their age before they can see posts that offer information about the procedure. Instagram says it is working to fix the problem, calling it a bug. Currents News and the Tablet newspaper will continue to bring you coverage of the aftermath of the Supreme Court ruling. And this week's paper is especially chock full of information. In the Diocese of Brooklyn's pro-life paper, you see a breakdown of how the justices ruled and their opinions on Roe v. Wade. We also hear from bishops across the U.S. who are praising the overturning. And for the faithful of Brooklyn and Queens, a message from Bishop Robert Brennan that answers the question, where do we go from here? Ahead of the holiday weekend, why not go somewhere fun? We can't afford it due to inflation and gas prices. Well, don't worry, the tablet has you covered. The paper shows you places you can go to spur a spiritual renewal within the state boundaries of New York. Or maybe instead you want to settle down with a good book at home. Well, the tablet's summer reading list is out, and it includes more than 100 books recommended by pastors, parishioners, Catholic journalists, and more. So be sure to go to your local church to pick up the paper or subscribe at thetablet.org. And just a reminder that Currents News will be taking a break for the week of 4th of July, but there will still be lots of great programming you don't want to miss, including the Collars versus Scholars baseball game, a special travel show roaming the Eternal City, and the Good News special. Then Currents News will be back with a new show on Monday, July 11th. There's a lot more news headed your way. Despite her abortion stance and her archbishop banning her from receiving communion, witnesses say they saw House Speaker Nancy Pelosi receive at the Vatican. Plus, is affordable housing getting harder to find? How inflation is causing some renters to struggle. And an attempt at a world record falls short. Why one Irishman is back in New York City despite his best efforts. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi met with Pope Francis Wednesday morning. Then she attended Mass and, according to people there, received Holy Communion. This despite being banned from doing so in the Archdiocese of San Francisco because of her stance on abortion.
I really would prefer not to do this, but I cannot in my conscience allow the situation to continue and cause this scandal.
That was Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone last month, explaining why he banned House Speaker Nancy Pelosi from receiving communion in the Archdiocese of San Francisco. This is Pelosi today, before witnesses say she received the Eucharist at the Vatican. The Vatican, however, has not commented on whether Pelosi actually received communion at the Mass. The Democratic lawmaker is in Rome on a family vacation and attended the liturgy for the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul in St. Peter's Basilica Wednesday. While Pope Francis presided over the Mass, she apparently did not receive from him, but rather from one of the priests at the Basilica. All of this comes after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and Pelosi suggested that Roe be codified into law. Archbishop Cordileone banned Pelosi because of her outspoken support of abortion rights. He sent this letter to her and to the faithful on May 20th, saying she is not to be admitted to Holy Communion in accordance with Canon 915 of the Code of Canon Law. That law says Catholics obstinately persevering in manifest grave sin are not to be admitted to Holy Communion. The Archbishop says the decision came after years of prayer, fasting, and consultation with church leaders. He spoke more about it on America Media's The Gloria Purvis podcast.
People are getting confused, people are getting upset, and it's also fueling these flames of polarization and dissension. Some people might accuse me of doing that as well, but I just know in my conscience I have to do something to teach clearly about this evil and that there are solutions to this dilemma that we're in.
Last month, the speaker pushed back, saying she comes from a large family with many members who oppose abortion and that she respects people's views about it, but doesn't respect people foisting their views onto others. NATO declared Russia the most significant threat to the peace and security of its members at its summit in Madrid on Wednesday. The leaders vowed to strengthen support for Ukraine. This as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky criticized the alliance for not doing more to help him defeat Moscow. President Biden wants to send more Navy destroyers to the region to beef up U.S. presence there. It's a mass exodus from the NYPD. Detectives are leaving the force in droves as frustration mounts over the fight against rising crime. According to the Detectives Endowment Association, more than 100 detectives retired in June, and another 75 are planning to hand in their badge next month. Altogether, 250 detectives have retired this year, many saying they're frustrated by revolving door justice. And it's not just detectives. Officers in general are leaving the department in record numbers. According to NYPD pension stats, nearly 1,600 officers have left the force this year alone. That number includes over 1,000 retiring and more than 500 resigning. It's a staggering spike compared to last year when just over 1,100 officers overall left the NYPD. It comes as an accused killer is freed. Glenn Hirsch, the man who allegedly shot a Queens delivery man over a Chinese food order, was granted bail Monday. He faces murder charges in the death of Jiwen Yan back in April. Police say his motive was a long-standing grudge with a Chinese restaurant in Forest Hills, including not getting enough duck sauce with his orders. Hirsch is currently under home confinement and could get life in prison if convicted. Besides crime, finding affordable housing is another issue that's high on the list for New Yorkers. While many say the city needs more affordable housing, the Department of Housing and Urban Development says the city actually has 490,000 subsidized housing units, the most in the nation. But experts say rent-stabilized apartments could be throwing the city's housing market off. A New York University study on rent-regulated housing found that the low tenant turnover is driving up prices overall and keeping out city newcomers. Whether it's skyrocketing rent or being priced out of buying a home, affordable housing is becoming out of reach for many Americans. As Omar Jimenez reports, the situation has put the squeeze on some Americans in unmanageable ways.
Is your room clean?
For millions of Americans, paying rent means a balancing act.
Yeah, I pay it every month. I don't pay it on time. I pay it when I get it.
Erlene Braggs and her 2 kids have been in this Chicago apartment for a little more than 3 years. She says she's making more money than she ever has, but it doesn't feel like it.
It basically seems like those little stimulus checks that they gave us, they basically collecting it all back. Sometimes I have to not do one thing or not pay something in the full amount just to make sure something else is covered and then catch back up on that the next round.
She's not alone either. Across the United States, inflation is at its highest levels in 4 decades as rents have hit record highs this year and mortgages have seen week-to-week increases not seen since the 80s. According to a new report from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, more than 10 million renters say they're not caught up on rent as of March, the highest proportion in Black communities, where it's over 1 in 5 renters.
This is my room.
For many families, the challenge comes from keeping up.
I want to cry. Everything is going straight to bills, and like everything is a bills. I mean, I just feel like I be robbing Peter to pay Paul, you know.
And for Braggs, making ends meet is as much about her audience as it is a payment on the first of the month.
That was Omar Jimenez reporting. In an attempt to bring prices back to a reasonable level, the Federal Reserve hiked interest rates and might raise them even more. Some sad news about our 2 Irish rowers who plan to make a transatlantic trip. Damian Brown and Fergus Farrell left New York more than 2 weeks ago and planned to row almost 2 months to the Galway Bay in Western Ireland. But unfortunately, they've hit some troubled waters.
I get some short breathing panic attacks.
Fergus has been forced to stop the trip after experiencing severe exhaustion, tightness on the left side of his chest, and a low blood oxygen percentage. He was taken back to New York, where he went to the hospital to undergo testing. Damien, meanwhile, is continuing the journey solo. Let's see where he is now. He's making good progress as he nears the end of Nova Scotia. There's no word yet if Fergus's departure will delay Damien's estimated arrival time. Good luck to him. I feel so bad for Fergus. Still to come on Currents News, they are two drawings of Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. We'll tell you just how much the rare and expensive artwork is expected to fetch at auction. And the family of a World War II veteran who made the ultimate sacrifice gets back one of his cherished belongings. It's as close as anyone is going to get to owning Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Two chalk and pastel studies of the famous painting are going up for auction by Sotheby's. They were made by Leonardo's assistant and depict St. John the Evangelist and St. James the Less. Experts say the drawings were once owned by a 19th century Dutch king and are expected to sell for nearly $147,000 apiece. Finally, the story of a cherished relic that was lost and then found. The family of a World War II soldier who died almost 80 years ago now has his class ring back. Jim Mendoza tells us where it was found and how it made it back to the States.
During World War II, brothers Ronald and Robert Kuroda fought alongside other Japanese Americans against Nazi Germany. Ronald in the famed 100th Infantry Battalion, Robert with the highly decorated 442nd Regimental Combat Team.
They're proving their loyalty to a country that did not quite trust them.
In October 1944, Staff Sergeant Robert Kuroda was killed in combat near Bruyères, France, where he also lost his high school ring. This ring.
When you look at it now, it's shiny. You can still see Farrington High School. You can still see the words that say, enter to learn, go forth to serve.
Last November, a Frenchman named Sebastian found the class ring while he was out walking with his metal detector in the forest near Bruyères. It was buried about 8 inches deep for almost 80 years.
All he saw was Farrington High School, 1940, and on the inside, it had the initial R, Kuroda.
Sebastian searched the internet for months until he found Kuroda's relatives, who are extremely grateful that he went that extra mile.
He went out of his way, did the research, and wanted it returned to the family, and that's what he did.
Last month, Kevin Kuroda and his family went to Bruyères to meet Sebastian and to receive the ring and to thank him for his kindness. He took them into the forest where Sergeant Kuroda and his 442 comrades bravely fought against the enemy.
We actually went to the spot where he believes Uncle Robert was killed.
Ronald Kuroda received a Distinguished Service Cross for his valor during the war in Europe. In 2000, President Clinton presented the Kuroda family with a Medal of Honor for Robert's heroism. An area near the Halekoa Hotel is dedicated to Sergeant Kuroda's memory. The high school ring is another reminder of him.
It means the world to us. It means the world to us and our family.
Amazing. That was Jim Mendoza reporting. Robert Kuroda's class ring will be placed alongside his Medal of Honor at Kevin's Auto Body Shop. Don't forget, Currents News will be taking a break for the week of 4th of July, but there will still be lots of great programming you don't want to miss, including the Collars versus Scholars baseball game, a special travel show, Roaming the Eternal City, and the Good News special. Then Currents News will be back with a new show on Monday, July 11th. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.